In this guide, we're going to be taking a look at all the different enemy types and bosses in Resident Evil Village's Shadows of Rose DLC. We're skipping forward 16 years after the events in the village. Rose isn't a baby anymore, though she is a bit of an outcast. And if she wants to become normal, she's got to link up with the remnants of the Megamycete, enter a labyrinth of warped memories known as the Realm of Consciousness, which is basically purgatory for mold people, and then find the purifying crystal within it to remove all of her powers. Problem is, we've first got to encounter malevolent creatures, clones, the Duke wearing a funny mask, and lots of danger jam, so it's not exactly going to be a snatch and grab. Though I guess having a mysterious guardian angel to guide us around the place using his sparkly glitter should at least help to make things slightly easier to understand. The Resident Evil games have been known for being a bit wacky at times, but this DLC is absolutely friggin' nuts.
What is happening here?
So after being plopped into the first stratum of the Realm of Consciousness, Rose winds up in a twisted reimagining of Dimitrescu's castle. And aside from being able to find Lady D's stupidly big bathtub, we'll also be able to find a whole bunch of Rose duplicates, being tormented by savage monsters known as face eaters, which are basically like dementors made of paper mache. No surprise why they're called face eaters, because they've been ordered to hunt down the Rose copies, and of course, do this. Trading away their life force and leaving them in a pretty messed up state on the ground. And because you don't really want to end up like one of those copies, it's generally a good idea to keep them at bay. The Realm of Consciousness seems to be absolutely swarming with these guys, which can all suddenly decide to rock up to the scene by emerging from blobby pools of red gunk, smothered all over the walls and floor. But just because you're in some sort of dreamlike memory bank, doesn't mean you're going to be completely vulnerable to everything inside it. Fortunately, there are a few guns and weapons for us to use in here, and the laws of the real world still sort of apply here too. So shooting a monster in the head is still going to do exactly what you'd expect it to do. With that said, ammo is fairly limited, and these things are bloody everywhere. So whenever you get swamped by a whole gang of them, it can often be best to just give them the slip. One minute we're being chased around by something without a face, the next minute we're being chased around by something with far too many of them. The Executioner is basically the first stratum's biggest menace, sent to go after any Rose copies that haven't yet been hoovered up by all the face eaters, and destroy them with his giant toilet brush of doom. Seems this sort of applies to yourself. He's been unleashed into the castle to hunt you down too. And being far too strong and powerful to be taken on directly, you'll be spending a fair bit of your time just creeping around this dude, hoping that he's not going to pop out from behind to cause you some very big problems. You can't evade him forever though, as you'll eventually be captured and thrown into the ring with this guy. Not a very fair fight, but at least he's kind enough to give you something to shoot at, with that bright orange thing on his chest being a glaringly obvious weak spot. The Executioner sort of acts a bit like RE8 in the main game, in the sense that he's just going to plod towards you with that oversized weapon swinging around. Though because Rose jogs around the place at the speed of a 70-year-old man with gout, avoiding this dude can be easier said than done, especially when you need to keep twirling around to blast away at that flowery looking thing. In the second phase of the fight, the red mold starts to seep its way into the Executioner's yard, forcing you to go into a narrow tunnel area, thus giving you far less room to maneuver around the beastie bugger. He's a lot more aggressive here, and he's even conjured up the energy to charge at you, which isn't exactly great news considering how small the space is now, though a new glow-in-the-dark flower has sprouted up on his leg, giving us a new weak spot to point our guns at instead. The last phase takes us into the main arena again, but that weak spot's now situated on the Executioner's back, so not a very easy target to hit. Though thankfully, Rose's mold powers can freeze the big guy in his tracks, making this final part of the fight a hell of a lot easier. He does keep slumping off into puddles of goop to reposition, but apart from that, he's sort of ran out of ideas. Probably should have kept his flowers to himself. After being forced to jump into a big black void of nothing, James Sunderland style, Rose ends up going further into the Megamycete's memory banks, dropping into another familiar location, the grounds of Donna Beneviento's spooky old house. This place was known for being a bit of a nightmare in the main game, and it's not exactly going to be sunshine and daisies here either, especially when you find out that you've got to go back into that dreaded basement again, unarmed. And we all know what was lurking around in there. But this time, Rose has got to battle with her own demons. She's constantly taunted in here about the struggles of growing up as a mold mutant, and the fact that she can't make any friends, because she's a mold mutant. The longer you're in the basement, the nastier the manifestations, and you'll eventually be haunted by mere mannequins that keep popping up out of nowhere while you're jogging around trying to solve a bunch of puzzles. It's all fun and games until these freaky dolls start chasing you around in the darkness, doing the whole weeping angels thing, where they can only move around when they're not being looked at. With the basement using themes of childhood trauma against Rose, I guess this could sort of tie into her memories of playground games. With the main difference here being the fact that Rose gets dragged to hell by a bunch of death dolls if she loses. You've got to think smart and work your way through the area, without getting cornered and without getting snuck up on, as more mannequins keep popping up along the path ahead, which is sure to give your heart rate a good jolt and probably turn you into an anxious wreck. There's just something about these things and the way they peek around those bloody corners. Donna Beneviento's Little House of Horrors is the gift that just keeps on giving. Rose might have made her way around the mannequins, but she's definitely not out of the woods yet, winding up on the ground floor, completely surrounded by Donna's collection of creepy-ass dolls. To make things even weirder, Rose has also been shrunken down to the size of a gerbil, which doesn't exactly make life any easier, especially with the dolls coming to life, floating around the place, and trying to butcher us with an assortment of stabby objects, and necromorph arms. Because we still don't have access to any weapons here, this section is of course a stealth section, and we've basically got to creep around in the shadows trying our best not to accidentally step into one of the dolls' blinded spotlights. If we do, then Rose isn't exactly going to have a very good time. The floating search parties are pretty adamant about finding her, though to be honest they really just want an excuse to pull out those knives, and so long as they're stabbing the hell out of something, then they're probably going to be satisfied to say the least, giving us plenty of opportunities to create distractions and invent new ways to move around the house without being spotted. The basic mannequins might be able to make grown men shit themselves, but imagine being chased around by a really bloody big one. Okay, it technically isn't a big one, because Rose has been shrunken down in this section of the game, but our perspective says otherwise. And this one even breaks the rules, and moves around while we're staring it dead in the face. If you've ever wondered what it'd be like if you mixed Resident Evil with the Little Nightmares games, then you're probably not going to get much closer than this. Rose has got to sneak around the house without the giant mannequin noticing. If she accidentally steps into that spotlight of death though, then she'll be picked up by the bloody thing and turned into a Big Mac. The giant mannequin can catch up to us really quickly with its long strides, pretty much insta-killing if it gets too close. But thankfully there's only one to contend with, and that can be evaded by hiding around the furniture and just generally staying out of its way. This seems like a pretty good time to stick a spoiler warning up on the screen, as the next couple of enemies are a bit more tied into the DLC's story, the characters, and of course, the final boss. So while Rose was wandering around in Donna's doll-infested house, she was constantly being taunted and bullied by a mysterious presence in there, warping the environment, producing evil dolls, and generally being a bit of a douche. Despite going through a somewhat similar kind of experience to her father Ethan, being harassed by illusions linked with her own traumas, the psychological torment this time wasn't being conducted by Donna. It was another spiteful entity causing Rose to trip balls and go through hell instead. Remember the evil little mole child Evelyn? Well, she's up to no good here too, as the remnants of her consciousness still remain in this realm, allowing her to manifest into physical form here, and continue to manipulate her surroundings using her powers. Evelyn's still got an unrelenting hatred for pretty much everything, and she's especially pissed off about Rose existing too, jealous of her being Mia's actual child rather than being her rejected lab-grown experiment. She might be a bit of a tragic character, but you've still got to deal with her nevertheless, as the little shit twists the environment and sends you through a deadly maze of murderous dolls. Though you'll both eventually have a final showdown in the main hall of Donna's house, where Evelyn pretty much does the same sort of thing she did back in Resident Evil 7, levitating in the air, screaming her head off, and generating powerful energy pulses to knock you down to the floor. You basically just gotta hide behind the furniture, waiting for a bit of an opening, and then pop out to give Evelyn a taste of her own medicine with your own mouldy powers, relocating to a new piece of cover whenever she decides to teleport across the room. The red goop on the floor forces you up the stairs, where you'll basically have to keep doing the same sort of thing. But with the help of Rose's mysterious guardian angel, you'll both finally be able to overwhelm Evelyn together, temporarily shutting her down and putting a stop to her full-blown tantrum. Well, up until she starts kicking off again. Rose just isn't strong enough to deal with the little bugger, and so that guardian angel manages to manifest into physical form and shove Rose into another big black hole, just before Evelyn manages to make too much of a mess. With Rose falling deeper into the realm of consciousness, she finds herself in a corrupted version of the village, which, let's be honest, now sorta looks like a sci-fi movie made by Christopher Nolan. Gotta push on forwards to try and find that purifying crystal, even if it means going up against more face eaters, that are now even starting to look a bit more like the Rose duplicates that they keep feeding on. You know what they say, you are what you eat. Well, that original Megamycete is sorta still there, in a bit of a different form, now being used as a gigantic biological birthing factory which continuously pumps out those Rose duplicates into a little pool of sludge. The fact that there's also a nearby shrine dedicated to the Black God, which was Mother Miranda's pet name for the fungal root, can only mean one thing. Yep, she's back again. Or at least her consciousness is. She's repurposed the Megamycete into a big fleshy machine and used Rose's DNA to try and replicate the real thing. No, she's not intended to take on a droid army, but she's still stupidly adamant about finding a vessel for her daughter's mind, still believing Rose to be the chosen one to act as a suitable host. The Rose copies were failures, having no power or traits of the real Rose, as they were put through a series of stressful monster-riddled trials to find one strong enough to survive, all overseen by the Masked Duke, another one of Miranda's creations. Of course, the only way Miranda was ever going to get any kind of positive result was by luring the real Rose into the realm, which is exactly what she did, putting her through the same trials as the copies to see if she passed the test. If you got this far in the DLC, then Rose did pass the test, but she's fallen right into Miranda's trap, touching the crystal to transfer her powers, only for Miranda to pop up moments later to take advantage while Rose is vulnerable. Time for Mr. Guardian Angel to step in before things go south, who just so happens to be Ethan Winters himself, Rose's mouldy hero dad. The two of you get chased outside the cave, but it's not long until Miranda starts slapping Ethan all over the place, as she's obviously not got over what he did to her all those years ago. Ethan saved Rose a hell of a lot of times, so it's only right for her to return the favour, smashing the crystal, restoring her powers, thus allowing her to take Miranda down once and for all. With the both of you locked in battle, flexing your powers, and basically doing all sorts of crazy stuff that you wouldn't expect to do in a Resident Evil game. Miranda fights in a much more streamlined way than she did the first time around, mainly just swooping around launching yellow blobs, occasionally throwing in a few curveball moves to try and throw you off guard, but nothing too wild that we didn't really see in the main game fight. Though because Rose can use her powers to dodge around, and even charge up energy from Miranda's floating projectiles, this allows us to stay on top of her attacks, which would otherwise be practically impossible to avoid. Rose can power herself up so much that she can even control the mold in the environment and use it to stun Miranda, freezing her in place and making it much easier for us to pepper her with gunfire. But in the end, Miranda's just too bloody strong, so we need a little bit more help from Ethan, who is once again willing to sacrifice himself to save his daughter, by transferring the remnants of his power over, thus giving Rose the strength to knock Miranda down from the sky, before she can cause some serious problems. And by using everything left in the tank, Rose finally destroys Miranda and causes the realm to disintegrate, letting Rose say a final goodbye to Ethan before being sent back to the real world. What a friggin' wild ride that was. So if you enjoyed this video and want to see loads of other Resident Evil monsters, then you should probably check out the playlist up on the screen right now. Special thanks to all my channel members for the support, and I'll see you in the next one.